No, so talked to Brian and he wants to test out his webcam. So I figured we could set up a little Zoom call with him and kind of if he's in the mood to talk, has some time, maybe we can talk to him a little bit, kind of a pre-Brian interview. Just get him I want to ask him about Nathan too. So because I know that he's coming up on our interview list. So it'd be nice to have a little ammunition there as far as how that all got started because I was not involved when Brian and Chaz, Nathan, I need to ask him about that. What I know him as Chaz, but his name now is Nathan. So, but how that got started with him, how he and Brian got connected over the PV TPM sequencer and how that all came down. So,
Cool. Sounds fun. Let's do it then. I'm Mike Dow.
I'm Mike Nimmix, and this is Mike's
Mike's
on
on
Mike's.
Mike's.
Mike's on Mike's. Yeah.
Do you have stuff you got to do, or
Right now is basically the only time next 45 minutes I've got the house to myself. So
okay?
let's
Let me see if he's
do what we can do. If not, we'll just shoot the
let me
shit with you for a
see
while.
if he's DTZ.
ETZ.
Down to Zoom. Is that what we're doing? Yeah, I don't that picture of me whenever I was in Earl Campbell's lap. My hair is all like, because you
Brian's really confused right now. I'm going to tell you.
that's Earl Campbell and that's me when I was 4.
He was just like a famous running back for UT football.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah,
then
that's
he
like
played,
you having a picture with Leon Lett or whatever.
right.
and then he played for the Houston Oilers for a minute, and now he sells sausage here in Austin. So, it's a thing.
This is like Earl's Hot Links.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, yeah. The problem though is my hair there, is all over the place, and we didn't figure out till I was like 40 that I actually have a thing called uncombable hair syndrome, which is great if you're a rock star, which I never was.
That's a great album title.
Right? Yeah.
Uncombable hair.
Uncombable
hair syndrome.
Oh, syndrome. Okay.
Because everything's a something syndrome or something these days.
Yeah.
That's true.
100%.
He just said he's trying to make his way home, should be home in about 45 minutes. So
all right. Well, we may miss him, but we can grab some stuff with you.
Exactly.
Might as well since we're here.
What is your history with Nathan / Chaz Hewitt? Brian, I remember just him being this kind of short, stocky guy in junior high that showed up maybe 8th grade or something, and he was related to Ricky Vance, or he dated Ricky Vance's cousin.
Go on, say I don't remember that. His cousin, huh?
She was like a year younger. Was it Michelle Vance or?
I don't remember that at all. I remember Ricky's sister.
Or was that? Well, no. This was a girl that was like a year behind us. Okay. She was in 8th grade. Okay, great, whatever. But I think he lived on Wade, did he not?
It was sounds right. He towards the pretty close to the highway. 183 access road there, by that area by the Bedford Pool.
Stonegate.
Stonegate. Yeah, right. He lived down in that area.
No, the Bedford Pool, Mike, not the Central Park
Pool. Oh, snap.
Stonegate Pools.
Stonegate Pools. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, over there. Okay.
Stonegate Pool, right. So in the Stonegate neighborhood, in a stone house with large white bricks.
And like conquistador gates.
Correct. Which I don't remember. I remember the outside very well, but I don't remember actually going inside his house. If I did, I don't remember it. I think he just initially just came over to see my keyboard.
I mean, how did that happen? Were y'all talking about it in class or something?
I don't know, honestly. I can't remember. I mean, I'm sure we were. I mean, but I don't think we had any classes together, but somehow we started talking. I mean, maybe he found out from you, for all I know. But somehow we started talking about my keyboard, and he had, I think at that time he had a Kurzweil.
You think it was a K2000?
Yeah, he had the K2000 full I don't know if it's 88 or 76 key. I think 88.
Well, yeah, maybe that one. It seemed like it. I've got one. I think they're 64.
Okay.
You could get like the sampling option. You can get the rack mount version. But yeah, I think that's
But it was
right.
the keyboard. It had the 3.5 floppy, and the big thing, but at that time was sampling. Was that's what if you're Mike was talking about, and I heard you guys talking about the keyboard store that was up there on
Central
Pipeline.
Pipeline. They had a what was it, Emacs.
Yeah.
And we went into that music store, Mike and I did, just to play with the sampler, because I mean that was the coolest thing. That was what everybody was into. Everybody wanted to sample real world sounds, and so I'm this may be a bit of revisionist history, but I mean I feel like having Nathan, Chaz, Nate, him having the ability to sample made him a superhuman in my estimation, and a more powerful sampler on the Kurzweil than on what I had a PV-DPM4.
Yeah.
And it did have the ability to sample, but it was, the editing was nowhere near as advanced as what was on the Kurzweil. So I was really interested in that. And somehow he ended up over at my house, and then, and you can talk to him about this, but at one point or another, he ended up living at my house, which is, something he has in common with Mike.
You don't have a place to go, just go to Bryan's. Doesn't matter if he's home or not.
Keep that in mind.
Thanks,
Brian.
There were people that were, well, my parents' house. You can go live with my mom. There were a lot of people that just spent a lot of time just hanging out at my house. And we had it got more as we got into high school. It got a lot more, even more this way. But we had kind of a little mini studio set up there, so it was a fun place to hang out. So anyway, he ended up living there for, I don't know, a couple of weeks. So he basically spent 75-80% of his time while he was living in my house sitting in front of my PV-DPM4 and just I remember him, he like recorded, and he recorded himself playing each individual part of, was it Enjoy the Silence, and on the sequencer, and you play it back and it sounded, all the parts were there, all the sounds were pretty close, and it was pretty amazing that he had he had a kind of, he had an ear where, you know, I consider myself to be, all of my musical ability comes from hard work and desire. And I don't, I never had a natural talent. I never had I've never been I think my father is tone deaf. He has hearing problems. And so, I've never been one of those people that could, but he definitely, Chaz he could just listen to something and then just play it on the piano. So that was pretty amazing during that time period. But that's to answer your question. I have no idea how I met it.
Cool.
But this speaks to what you and I spoke with originally, Mike, which was figuring the well, Bryan just said DPM4, but I think was it not a DPM3 that got upgraded to a DPM3 SE Plus, which was actually just the equivalent of a DPM4?
It was a DPM3, which is what I purchased. But we kind of made friends with the sales rep at the Brook Mays and Irving, Tommy Mack, and we were one of the only people in DFW that bought one of those keyboards. And so, and I think, in retrospect, Tommy, I think he sold it to us because it was like, he probably it's probably something he made a good commission on. But when they were developing the DPM4, they needed beta testers, and Tommy signed me up to be a beta tester for the DPM4. And so the way that they did that was they had me bring it in and ship it to them, and they did a firmware update, and then they put a sticker on it that said DPM3 SE. So
I think it was like SE Plus or something.
It's SE Plus, yeah. So it was, which was interesting because it was so that made my DPM3 a DPM4. Except it was an SE Plus, which meant that it was kind of like a unlocked DPM4. It had more capabilities, I think, than what they were rolling out to the general public.
I mean, it had a sampler on it, or you could load samples or play them or something weird.
Well, I think the SE stood for sample editor or something like that, or sample enabled or something. Yeah. So that was the thing, was that when we, upgraded it, they were trying to compete with, that was, InSonic and Kurzweil had samplers. And so they had to have one too, if they wanted to compete, because, that's why I'm sure Tommy Mack couldn't sell it, because people were coming in saying, yo, I want a sampler so I can make fat beats. And so, they put a sampler in it, and that was really interesting. I think the Plus also, because I had to send it into them. We did a firmware update, and we had an issue with the keys depressing and never getting out of bed. You could push the key and it would just stick.
Would it physically stick down, or would just the note stay?
It would physically stick down.
Oh,
it was like a hardware problem with the PV hardware issue. And Mike and I actually really grew to love the PV synthesizer, because it's pretty dirty. Their amps and the guitar stuff is pretty low end, pretty dirty sound, pretty noisy, pretty gritty.
Cool.
And it's not really what you want for guitars. but it worked really well with synthesizers because it it didn't sound electronic. It sounded I don't want to say warm because it wasn't like an analog synthesizer where it was really warm sounding,
Right.
but it sounded more. I mean, it didn't sound as digital, and
Colorful.
so I guess what's that?
Colorful.
Yeah, there was a lot of color in the sound, a lot of timbre that wasn't in it. You know, making the songs that we did, we made a few tracks that were all from the PV, and they didn't sound all that great. But when we built songs with multiple different instruments, and then we had the PV sound as a lead, it really stood out. Insomnia by Faithless. I don't know if you've ever heard that. It was a big club hit, and they have an organ as the main lead in that song, and they use the PV synthesizer, and you can tell, and it just it really stands out apart from all the other electronic sounds. So you know, we learned to when we first had it, we were disappointed by the sound quality, and then over time we learned to love it because we could, you know, you learn, you know, the Casio keyboards aren't great on their own, but when you get them into the studio and you can pull them out and treat them, then you can, you know, they stand out. They make a statement against all the background of other sounds. So
that's always fun. I always enjoyed that with whatever I had, like the U220, any sort of Roland sound or Kirschweiler sound or something like that, where I'd been through the banks, right? And I'd played with all of them. And then you're just, you know, listening in the car on the radio one day and you're like, hey, I know that sound.
Yeah.
I've got that sound.
Right.
Those guys are cheating.
Uh,
They're using that preset.
Yeah. That's just an acoustic piano with chorus. Hey.
Well, that was one of our favorite techniques that we used to use is we would find a preset sound that had the parameters that we wanted, and then scroll through different waveforms or bass samples to, like, I don't really like this sound, but I like the way it react, the way, you know, I like the attack and I like the sustain and I like the delay, but I don't like the sound.
Right.
So we have a preset and then just find a sound to fit into those preset parameters. Mm-hmm. So, you know, this is a saxophone. It's exactly what I want, but I don't want it to sound like a saxophone. I want it to sound like a guitar. So, you know, that was one of our favorite ways to hacks without having to design our own, or you just start with something that's close and then get it to. So yeah, when you can hear people that, oh, I know which preset that they used to develop that sound.
Yes.
That's always pretty cool. I remember hearing one of the presets on our JD990 in a TV commercial, and I was like, oh, that's an old sound. You using that in 2023?
Heck yeah. Well,
they were like, no one will ever know.
Well,
no, I knew.
So yeah, it's funny because it's like a smell or anything like that. It just takes you straight back, and you're like, I know what patch that is. But so Roland has done something really fun, kind of. It depends on how you define fun, but the deal is that you can actually you subscribe to their virtual instrument library, and they have all the greatest hits. Like they got my D50 in there. Yeah, it's cool stuff.
Drum machines?
I'm sure. Yeah. I haven't looked into it too much, but I just know, that's kind of rendered my old, well, it hasn't, you know, people who really like old gear, you know, it's still worth something, but you know, eventually my power supply is going to go out, and I'm not going to be able to find anybody who could fix it, and I can't fix it, and
Yeah.
you know, those things are going to die. But virtual synths are going to be around forever, and I guess they're close. I mean, I'm guilty. I've used a virtual Hammond B3, so you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, of course, I mean, Mike and I used to be really into gear, and I mean, you know, we still are for the aesthetics, but I mean, you know, you can very easily take all the fun out of it by making it all about, you know, the last few years I've been more into yeah, well, when I designed the studio that I'm in right now, you know, it was like, well, can I do everything that I need to do in a very small space? And I'm sharing it with my daughter's playroom. So, but you know, my brother helped me build the PC that I'm using now for production, and he asked me like what kind of sound card and AD converter I wanted and all that stuff, and I don't, because everything that you do, if you're making music on a computer, well, everything that you do that's not on that computer is an opportunity for loss, and you know, people build these $1 million studios and then buy cheap cables, and the music sounds like cheap cables. So, you know, to me, if I can fit everything that I need in a backpack now, I'm happier. I mean, we kind of did the big the giant room full of gear thing, and boxes of cables, and why is my electric bill so high? Because it's
warm in the wintertime.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't even have to run the heater. So, you know, I love all that stuff. Don't get me wrong. You know, just being around it, just being, you know, not even, you know, but messing with it and getting everything to work and play nice together. And, you know, I'm not as into that now. So.
Yeah, it does lose some of its joy. I found that whenever I'm trying to be creative, I have something in my head. I'm like, let's get this down. And so I go, fire up a computer, turn on, hey, look at that.
Yeah.
What are we
Brian's
looking
bedroom in high school.
Yes. Yeah. That is awesome. So just go through it real quick. Tell me what I'm looking at, and like from left to right.
Well, I mean, this is kind of a
drum set.
Well, this
a
is
one-person deal.
Yeah.
This is the thing you have to understand. When I said that Nathan lived with me for a little while, and so did Mike, and so I mean that's his drum set. And,
so,
you know.
So, but like behind it, it looks like there's 2 keyboards, and it looks like there's a computer, and I guess it's running Cubase. That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
What's it, Cubase or Cakewalk at that point? What year is this? I don't even know. This looks like 1991.
I don't know. I mean, right here is a rack that has, you know, the Ensoniq and maybe a Session 8.
Okay.
And a Proteus.
Oh, Proteus.
World. Proteus 3 World. What other racks did we have at that point? Maybe Spectrum Synth.
Yeah.
So the JD990.
JD990, Ensoniq ASR10. Probably a Boss DR660.
PV Spectrum Synth we got at one point, but that I think came later.
And so there's a little workstation here, and then you can turn around and play the drums. And I brought it over there because I was creating an ASR10 drum kit sampled off my drums.
This area over here had more, like this was gear too, and I'm not sure. Like this is the rack I recognize.
Here.
Yeah, but over to the left, I think there was more stuff there.
Did
I'm
y'all?
not sure. I also had this was from
Oh.
Yeah, the most
this
common.
is
That's
my closet in College Station.
Well, that's a DAT recorder, right?
Yeah, that's a Sony PCM 2800 or
Yeah.
something like that. This is a Lexicon Vortex
Okay.
effects processor.
Lexicon, nice guys.
We had the Sony 2. We had a guitar effects processor, like a GR5. I don't know.
It
And
was
then
a,
we
it
had
was,
a reverb unit.
Yeah.
well, that was a synthesizer that turned your guitar into a MIDI controller. So you could, if you went, you
Yeah,
play.
there were two things. Yeah, there was a pickup you could put on your guitar that had a MIDI chord output.
Oh, cool. Yes, I remember those.
Yeah.
I always the guitar. I've been able to. I play guitar and keyboard, and so writing songs is always a little more easy on guitar, I thought. And so I thought, man, what a great way to actually just get ideas down.
Yeah, but there's the rack right there. You have
Yeah, here you go.
the ASR10 on the left. You have that's the Hafler amp. And
Okay.
then above that is the PV Spectrum synth, Roland JD990.
Yeah.
Proteus World.
And then
This is a Furman power conditioner.
Okay. So your power amp there in the middle is for your near field speakers up there.
Correct. The Tenoise.
My boss loves Tenoise, and I'm slowly loving them too. So what you had described to me was like, and I don't remember seeing all of this.
I think some of this is fake.
It probably is. Was just the PV, and sequencing off of that. But yeah, I mean, you've got 4, controller and then 3 other looking keyboards.
This is just a PCM 200, a dumb Roland controller.
Yeah.
That I liked for 2 reasons. One, it was the smallest controller you could get at the time. I know you can.
Oh no, we lost him.
Dropped out.
All right, stand by. Sorry, we have problems with the tech sometimes. All right, and we're back.
That was weird.
Hello.
She's here. Perfect
She's
timing.
here. I'm on Zoom.
Hi, Max.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. She knows us. Cool.
She's a fan of the show.
Oh, good. Thanks. Well,
Let's face it, there's worse things you could be doing.
thanks for letting your husband come out and play. Go ahead.
Upstairs. She's on her way upstairs.
Yeah, my wife, she's like, wait, you're doing that this weekend? Oh, okay, cool. Like, she had other plans.
I was just testing my webcam. This wasn't planned at all. I just was trying to see if I could get my webcam to work.
Well,
Yeah, he had no idea we were actually planning on doing something
Gonna
today.
record, yeah. Well, we didn't. I think it's a good idea because I know how hard it is to get together. And your wife, if we keep you too long, she's gonna slowly not like this show. So
Yeah.
we do have to. Is that a Mackie?
Mackie 1604.
Okay.
And we had a 1202 for gigs. I think the 1202 came first, and all of a sudden we outgrew it very fast.
Yeah.
But here's a better view of the rack
There you
with
go.
the ASR10, the Hafler amp, the PV Spectrum synth, which had DPM waveforms because the PV didn't exist anymore. We could kind of get similar dirty cut through sounds off of that. It was a great lead, especially when you start messing with effects.
Wait, what is that?
That's the Spectrum synth.
Oh, yeah. You can't see the left side of it.
No, there's like there's a couple inches over on the left that are gone.
The teal.
And then, yeah. And then this is the JD990 with the 2 PCM slots. And Brian did buy the orchestral expansion card, which was inside it.
Now, would that only work for JD990, or would that work with? Because I know they had like U220. You could get a PCM card, or 10 of them, or 50, or whatever. It worked not just in that keyboard, but a couple others. I'm curious if maybe the
I have
U220.
no idea
Yeah.
at all. I wasn't involved in that. So,
Well, and that's the Proteus on top. I can tell right now.
yeah, that's the World, the Proteus 3. This is fake.
Okay.
This was just to fill out this Photoshop. And so is this crap. I don't know what the hell that is.
That's
But this
funny.
was our other rack with the DAT and the Vortex and the two
Photoshop.
Sony effects and the Furman power thing. It had these lights that you could slide out, which was
I
cool.
love that.
But
I
this
love that Furman thing. Those things were so expensive, and I was like, oh, I want one, and
well,
never
see
got
this
one.
right here that's
Yeah.
floating on those little deals. That was actually there. That's the zip drive for the
Yes.
ASR10.
Yeah, the external drive. I remember. Yeah, we had to upgrade for.
It's a SCSI interface zip for the ASR10.
Oh, scuzzy.
Dude, that made stuff. We didn't
I
have to
know.
load the grand piano off of 3 floppies.
Right.
It was part of the. Now we just had like, oh, here's multiple songs on a zip,
Yeah.
and it would load up all 8 banks. I mean, you could put 16, but
Yeah.
we only generally did 8 because the other ones were 8 were direct controlled.
Before we learned how to auto load, we were having to load each individual sound. Okay, which we had a piece of paper to tell us which channel which sound went on, and we were like, okay, what channel does?
Yeah.
We got that.
And then we finally got a process where like drums are always on channel 1. Like I was telling you, Mike, how
Yeah.
MIDI is default drums is 10.
Right.
Well, we wanted it on 1 through 8, and so if we ever loaded drums, it was channel 1.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean it makes sense because every time when I start a song, if I'm starting from scratch, you're starting with drums, you know.
Yeah.
Usually, you're like, well, this is the coolest part of the song anyway.
Now I put each individual drum instruments on a different channel.
Oh, sure. If you can do it all in the box, then heck yeah.
I have a channel for kick. I have a channel for snare. A channel for, but there have been times when I've tried to. Well, these two, random percussive sounds, I think I could just have on one channel, and then I get into the final mix, and I'm like, I want to turn down the cymbal. Oh, I can't because there's another sound that's. So now, I mean, I'm just meticulous about. Sometimes I have 40 tracks in my because I want everything on a separate. It takes longer to set it up initially, but
well, which seems like a lot, but it's really not. So we have to build systems for our students for Pro Tools, and the low end Pro Tools is like 128 tracks, and so now that's the limit, and you got to start bouncing after that. But it's pretty crazy, especially back in these days with the JD990 and whatnot. It's just like 128 tracks. What are you, insane? Are you a millionaire? Yeah.
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a better shot of that same picture. So I kind of remember this. There were so many different setups. I don't know if that is the PV. I think it is.
They all had a white phone in them for some reason, though.
Yeah, right here.
Just in case somebody needed to call and take it to DEF CON.
Where's my glow-in-the-dark swatch phone, though? That's what I want to know.
More importantly, where's the lava lamp?
Well, we had a lot of different mood lighting. Clearly, there's a red light in this picture coming from somewhere. I cannot identify the source, but I have dated this photo to at least 1993 based on that shirt.
Right.
That is the New Order Republic concert shirt.
I will say I do have one story, and I've told you already, Mike, and I don't. Maybe it made it on one of the shows. I can't remember. But I do remember you two guys that came over to meet or hang out or record that thing, and like it was a good kid. Y'all were good kids, and also not very worldly. I didn't know much about what was going on. I had certainly never experienced what was about to happen. And Mike Nemec turns around and has this thing, and he's lighting it, and he's like, "Are you cool with this?" And I'm like, "I don't know what that is." And he was like, "It's incense." Like in my head, it was like, "Are we doing heroin now? What's going on?" Like I had no
That's
idea.
hilarious because I'm sitting there going, I don't smoke anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have, God, we always burned incense in the studio.
Yeah.
Hey, Brian, I figured out what's over here.
What?
That is your Kenwood tuner and
Oh, my
tape and
stereo.
stereo.
Yeah.
That's your stereo on that white Formica cube.
At one point, that was the studio. The studio speakers were
Yeah, the Kenwood,
input
uh,
speakers.
the tall floor speakers.
Yeah, we did. I
Yep.
don't think we had the noise at that time.
So
No, they're not in the room. That wasn't until '94.
So did y'all end up doing? Here's what I ended up doing with mine is yes, it started out with a stereo speaker going through whatever CD input or aux input that it had, and then got some real near fields. But I always kept the stereo, and I would check my mixes through it. And then
Yeah.
later
Yeah.
on, I had 3 different sets of speakers that I would check my mix through. I had this tiny, the little put on your shoulder sort of boombox jam box thing,
Yeah.
and had a little tape cassette converter. You remember those that you'd put in your car? I'd put in that, and I
Yeah.
ran it and output into that, so I could be like, all right, how's this going to sound on a boombox? How's it going to sound on a nice home stereo? And how does it sound through my? And I got to tell you, just taking notes through them, it's so powerful and helpful. Because most people, I remember running out to their car and they're like, all right, I burned the CD. Okay.
Mhm.
Nope. All right, that's too loud.
We would have different, like, crappy headphones, good headphones, Brian's stereo, my stereo, and then the cars. I mean, I actually remember I had it playing on a tape player through some crappy headphones, and I went to the bathroom or something, and the headphones you can still hear, but it's really tinny and short. But I heard something that wasn't there. I heard a part, and then I put them back on, and then I was like, oh, I can compose a part. Because sometimes if you're just listening to a swath of a song or a certain frequency range, you can come up with something different. And I freaking put that in my pocket as here's a technique. Before we had Tannoy monitors, and even after, I'd say we would always switch over. We'd work with the Tannoys, but you get ear fatigue, and when you're mixing, you'd be like, well, what does this sound like in the living room on 11? So
The other thing that we did a remix one time, and we had some connections to the Lizard Lounge in Dallas, and so we brought the
Wow.
remix to the resident DJ, and he played it in the club with people, which was a great way to test. And we found out we had way too much bass in that mix, and
Or the
but
club might have had a little too much
well,
bass.
I mean,
Yeah.
well, they'll jack up the bass
well,
based on a good mix,
I
and
learned a
we were
lot.
jacking up the bass already.
We
Yeah.
were doing it for him, and the DJ was having trouble finding the snare, so I mean, we learned little lessons from that. Yeah, we went out to the car, we got the Sony Sport headphones and laid them on the desk and listened to it. Okay, what does it sound like from the headphones when you're not wearing them? Well, I mean, we did all that, still do all that stuff, but we also had my mom was the manager of the bowling alley in town, and in Showplace Lanes, and they had a club, they had a bar, and so I would go up there occasionally, and I'd take the mix and play it on the speakers during the day when nobody was there.
Cool.
And because one of the things I learned is that, like, your mix sounds great, but it sounds different at different volumes, and you gotta even on the same speakers, you gotta turn it down real low to where you can barely hear it, and say, okay, what do I hear? And then you got to turn it up to where it makes your ears hurt, and say, okay, what now it's what do I hear? So that was a really great tool have access, if you have access to a place where, like a club or someplace where you can play it really loud, and then you got to remember it sounds totally different. A club sounds different when it's empty versus when it's full.
Right.
So you hear people are there to absorb the sound, and it sounds totally different. But I mean, you can get a general idea. So yeah, we learned a lot of lessons the hard way.
Yeah, I have I've taken a couple of classes, and one of them was acoustics, and I've also been what I call tuning rooms at work, and it's really just room correction or system optimization or whatever you want to call it. But my takeaway is that every room is basically an instrument, and your music production, your mix, is playing that room. And just like every guitar resonates differently, and every violin and cello, rooms are the same. Even the ones that are treated to be studio spec.
I was talking to Mike about this on our hiking trip that we took last weekend, that the Sony reverb unit in the rack, from the picture when he was in, had his studio in the closet, that was a pretty, this is pretty common now for room reverb. That was kind of an innovative technique at the time. They developed a lot of the reverbs in that unit by taking a microphone and going to some famous places around the world and popping a balloon.
Yeah.
And developed all the parameters. But that was the first I've ever heard of that technique, was with that Sony unit. And the first time that I'm aware of that was available to, general population. And we loved that thing because it was just so much. It's such a world apart from the, was the Alesis reverbs that people, like,
MIDI verb.
What people had access to at that time was pretty basic stuff. And we got that thing. We were just totally blown away by, wow.
I didn't even know that there was a hardware version of that. I think they call that impulse response, right? And so you can. I remember seeing it for the first time.
You can't see me. I'll let you see this.
Oh.
Yeah.
There it is. So, wait, I do
the
remember
HR-MP5.
And so I remember seeing software versions in like a SoundForge and whatnot, where they were like, these balloon pops were done in these things over in Europe in these castles or whatever, and it has this impulse response, and you can load your own impulse responses. And I remember thinking, "Whoa, that's very cool." I had no idea that it was in hardware, so that's really awesome.
Can we load the impulse responses from that unit into? I wonder if we could get a plug-in version of that thing now.
I'm sure somebody somewhere,
like a virtual.
Yeah.
Because
you love those
Cubase
so
has
much.
a proprietary unit built in that is, it's the same concept. They have cathedrals that, by name, or they're generic names of Italian church,
right?
Or like, Tokyo theater, kind of thing. But they're, I don't know, the Sony ones were, to me, they were pretty special. Maybe that's a kind of retrospective issue. Maybe
I can tell you. So the stuff I had an ART TFX processor, and I also had a Digi something multi-effects processor, and they were better than nothing, But I will tell you that I always was jealous of like lexicon reverbs. I could never really make them sound as good or as lush as what I knew people were using lexicons. And I was like, I guess I have to drop $1 million to get my lexicon, but I don't have that. So yeah,
Yeah.
always sad with the reverbs for me.
Yeah, we didn't either. I mean, that's what people we were working with had.
Yeah.
The studio and Division of Beat and Channel 69 and all those guys had lexicon reverbs.
Yeah.
I was really happy with the sound of this thing, though.
That's, well.
And this is the
right.
guitar unit. So, I mean, physically they were the same. One was blue, one was this weird purple color, and one was geared towards guitars, and the other one was geared towards anything else. They were smart because they had MIDI in and out, or in out maybe through, to where when you had delay, you could say set the tempo based on MIDI,
Cool.
which was great. So you didn't have to mess with that.
That's pretty forward thinking, especially for back then.
Yeah, and they're great. I mean, they're still for sale today for about the same price that they were back then.
I don't know. When I got an extra $200, I might pick one up. So it sounds like you're kind of a in the box sort of mixing creation sort of person now. And I heard what you said, like, well, it's because then you can be a little more pure. And I've always asked people who use Cubase, like, why do you have a sample rate of 300 kilohertz? I mean, it's ridiculous. Nobody can hear that high. And then they're like, oh, electronic music, because we can do things with electronic music. Oh, I understand now. Or for
And
sampling.
we're back.
Hey, what'd you do?
I disabled and re-enabled the camera driver.
So yeah, electronic music was one reason to have crazy high sample rates. And then the other one was if you're going to be doing any sampling and retiming of audio, crazy high sample rates are actually a really good thing.
Yeah.
So
I think we got into it for that reason, because we were borrowing and or using vintage synths that we had acquired. There was a weird, crazy acquiring phase there, which was a lot of fun, and we were recording those because you couldn't, save the patches or whatever. Recording the part, and we wanted to sample it as high as possible, even though it was going to get knocked down to 44.1 at some point. But you can do something at 96 or higher and process it, and do the exact same thing at 44.1 and process it, and then knock the high one down to 44.1 and compare them, and the one that started high sounds better.
yeah, it's like photography. I did the same thing. You end up doing the experiment. You're like, that didn't make any sense. Surely not. And then you do it, and you're like, oh, okay, fine.
Well, I mean, it makes
right.
perfect sense.
Yeah.
I had this argument with a sound engineer once, but it's similar to the Pixel. Someone tried to convince me once that it didn't matter once you converted it, you could convert it to down and back up, and it would sound the same. And it's now.
Yeah, I don't believe that.
It's not true. The closer you get to analog, that's you're following the garbage in, garbage out.
Go to Photoshop, take a photo, pixelate it to 1 by 1, and then up-res it to whatever the original resolution was. It's still going to look like one single square. I mean, it's the visual representation of how BS that is.
And that is mostly true, except for today's AI is making that less and less true, right? And so I don't know. I have seen some of the noise reduction stuff, AI, or heard some of the noise reduction stuff through AI, and it's impressive, but it still holds true as the garbage in, garbage out is still mostly the case. But there may be a day when, well, we'll probably be too old to hear that high anyway.
Brian,
But yeah.
this guy is going to take our Ampex tapes from Dub 1 and put them to digital individual tracks.
Yeah, you told me about that. That's amazing.
And if you don't know that, Mike Dow, I'm telling you now that you're doing that.
Oh, me. Oh, cool.
What do you have
Hugs.
a reel to reel at your employer that would handle that?
Was it a 16 or an 8 track? 8 tracks or 16 tracks? And do you know how big the tape was?
It's about
16.
that big. I think it was 16, honestly.
Okay. I mean,
They're at my parents.
an
I could
inch or
I could
half
have
inch?
her send me a photo of the box. They're in those like vellum cardboard boxes.
It's the size of a large pizza.
Honestly,
Oh,
I'd say
good. I know exactly what you're
I'd say
talking
they
about.
were
Cool.
maybe 8 or 10 inches in diameter.
Yeah, no, I mean the width. The width is what I'm talking about.
Wow,
It's fine.
half inch. I don't know.
So
I don't remember.
honestly, the best thing you can do is find the original machine that it was on. And find that guy, figure out where that machine is. So you get the model and then find one on eBay if you really care about it. So we had a Studer that was not ours, but in our building for just a very, very short time. Or actually a couple of them. But the thing is, Austin might be the place to find something like that. So I'll ask around, and I do need to see what the tape actually is, so that I can talk to people and say, oh, do you have something that we can transfer this on? But I do have pretty nice A to D converters, and I need to look at them, put my hands on them, and then start talking to people.
I don't know if I like that or if it scares me. It's
Well,
kind of equal.
So here's the cool thing. You can bring it in, and if you don't like it, you can delete the files. Or you can actually nowadays do so much more with it with very little effort, right? The stuff that was impossible to do back then, like pitch correct, time compression, expansion that doesn't take 10 hours. So, yeah.
I remember those days.
Hey, Brian.
Yeah. Oh,
What are we looking
And I
at?
know that's him because of this.
yeah.
That's our guy?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's it.
Might be able to find the actual tape to tape or the tape machine picture in here somewhere. Oh.
That looks a lot cleaner than what we recorded it. I think that's almost freaking stock art.
Well, he moved to Dallas.
Oh, that's him.
Yeah.
Okay.
He looks like the dude from The Hangover.
Well, not to be morbid, but call him before he dies. I mean, I'm serious. Like, there's people around who, oh, I could call that guy and he can tell me all these answers, and they're gone now.
I'm really surprised he doesn't have Surge on his list of audio production.
That is
He doesn't
wait.
Doesn't have a project from 1994 on there?
Go to the top. Did that say Dorrough?
Yeah.
Like the people who make the awesome VU meters? Or is there a band called Dorrough? Like the people
I bet
who
there's a
make-
band called Dorrough because they liked the sound and said, oh, we're going to, whatever.
They're just broadcast VU meters.
Naming your band after your equipment is...
I mean, okay.
That's so 8th grade.
That's cool.
We're going to be called Marshall Stacks.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's, there you go. Moved from
Arlington to
Arlington off Division
Walnut Hill. Yeah.
to Walnut Hill.
All right. Well,
$50 an hour.
that's not terrible.
Basic rates. Here, take these tapes that you that have only been on your machine and put them back on your machine and output everything to your not session 8 at the highest kilohertz and yay.
That actually would be a really good
But
idea
I
if he
mean,
still has it.
well, he does. He doesn't. I, I
I
mean,
don't know, man. People sometimes keep gear.
do
If,
keep. I don't know.
it is an affliction
But he might.
amongst.
But he probably knows what it is.
Right.
So,
He would know what it is, and if he does still have it, which there was a point where people were like, analog, tape, but then it wasn't very long after that the argument
Was it
of
Ampex?
probably. Oh, we're doing this now. Cool. But
Yeah,
it
why the
wasn't
hell
very
not?
long that the argument between, hey, how come this digital sounds so cold, but the analog tape sounds so warm, and it's just gotten
now,
more.
now I have to use a plug-in to
Yeah,
put
that's
tape
right.
onto my mix
100%.
when I'm mastering. So I have to artificially insert tape noise.
Sure. Well, and so
But I don't have to worry about my plug-in degrading in the sun and baking it in a toaster oven.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
I mean that's what I mean. I would rather have a room full of analog synthesizers, but I don't want to mess with them. I don't want to manage them. I don't want to fight with them.
That's right. Because we're old enough now to know that things cost money to maintain. When back then it was just like, wait a second, if I bought a U220, it's gonna last forever.
Well, and it's amazing how far the gear that we had in the 90s outstripped our ability and talent and knowledge and skill by millions of miles. I mean, if we had the work ethic and the knowledge that we have today with that equipment, we could actually make music.
Unstoppable. Sure. You're not wrong. It wouldn't be just a hobby. We would be having issues just like the famous rock and rollers. That's cool. It's
gone.
It's done.
He may remember Bryan. Nobody ever remembered me. I was always in the background. I mean, Tommy Mac never remembered my name. He once introduced me as Robin. He's like, "This is Bryan," and he's like, and his sidekick, Robin. I was like, all right, whatever. I liked the role. I was like, because nobody really cared too much, so I was just I could stay in the background, and Bryan had to talk to people. So
you were always the guy in the tank drinking beer.
Well,
yeah, I was the guy in the tank drinking the beer, playing a few notes here and there, going. So,
well, were you known as the drummer, because that's kind of how drummers are treated?
No, if we did a live show, we were both playing keyboards or stuff like that. We never drug the drums out. That was my garage band kind of thing, Pez head, and then the drums, as far as our stuff went, we just sampled things. There's a few tracks that have the drums on them because it was a weird kit as far as the way it was tuned and sounded, but it made it unique. It was in that era where sample real world sounds and use them and program them electronically.
Yeah. So in this era with all this gear, what was the music that y'all listened to that was sort of your inspiration? Like, oh man, if we could just kind of sound like blank at that point in time, what was on your playlist?
Which point in time are we talking about?
Well,
that changed.
I'm thinking of that studio picture.
Yeah.
But I don't think we had. I think we liked imitating stuff because it helped us learn how to program stuff. But I don't think that we really wanted to sound specifically like someone else.
Okay.
In that regard, I think we both wanted a Fairlight really, really, really bad.
I mean, everybody wanted to be Peter Gabriel. I think.
I think we aspired to have a certain production quality level, and there were some people that were there were people that were doing things at the time that were like the Orb, uh,
Okay.
Alex Patterson's project. They they were doing things that were I don't know, they're pushing boundaries, experimental, and
Yeah. Oh no, we're doing the show.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. Uh,
Okay, I'll call Sophie really
I've got to
quick.
wrap it up soon
yeah,
too. So
we've got to wrap
That's
it up
fine.
anyway. But yeah.
Her
Okay.
later tonight.
Yeah, call her.
All right, love you. Bye.
Okay, love you. Bye. Well, yeah, you're saying the Orb was pretty much
we were influenced by Depeche Mode and Kraftwerk and New Order and
right.
Joy Division and Vince Clarke's various like offshoots and you know that whole genre in general. But we really liked when you could find an artist occasionally who, and a modern one is that I can think of as Underworld, was later a big influence. And when you can find a artist that you have a lot of trouble putting into a category, where is this dance music? Is it techno? Is it house? Is it rock? Is it, I don't know where to stick this. That, I mean, I think that was kind of what we were. That was like the main goal that we had, was not that we wanted to necessarily invent a new genre of music, but the goal, I think, was to, you hear a sound and you know, okay, that's this artist. And that's, I think that's the larger goal that we had. You can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong here, Mike.
You're going just fine.
I think that was, you know, for me, that was a big thing is, you know, we wanted to have, uh, we wanted to have a sound that was something people hadn't, you know, something people hadn't heard before.
Right.
And we wanted to like it too. And that's one of the, you know, that was one of the draws of electronic music to us in general, was that you could do something that made you go, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's neat. That's interesting sounding. That's, you know, I don't know. I mean, you know, I think it's some of that is ego from being young, that I've gotten away from that. I've gotten more into just, you know, you can still, there's plenty of room for being innovative and creating a signature sound with traditional instruments. People do that all the time, but back in that era, it was, you know, the possibilities that you could, you know, when you looked at synthesizers and electronic music, it seemed like just endless possibilities.
100%. I do remember feeling that way. Walking into the Brook Mazes and the Guitar Centers, I just thought, man, if only I would be unstoppable.
Yeah, but I think, you know, musicians, I find are, you know, I've watched interviews with some of the people that I, you know, respect, and you know, my wife is not a big New Order fan because, you know, she's prefers the Joy Division stuff. She's, you know, Bernard is not the best singer in the world, you know, and I'm like, well, that's kind of the point. I mean, they kind of came out of the punk movement. But I've seen, you know, watch these interviews with these people and the other band members, and you know, I noticed that Mike and I thought we were special, but musicians in general, I think, they tend to really get into pretty much anything that they can consume. I mean, there's a whole genre of music called, that we basically coined a term for, called it mystic honky tonk disco.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, it's like the most obscure genre of music that you can find, but like there was a time period we were really into it.
Yeah.
You know, I've since learned that most like serious like career musicians are like that, where they just, you know, they get you make techno, but you really are into bluegrass.
Right.
You know, because you can learn so much from, you know, classical music and any other genre that you can get, you know, you find things like even, you know, in country music and whatever else where you can somehow, you can't, in the moment, you can't really see how it translates, but, you know, you just absorb as much as you can. And so,
You're not wrong. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, it's been fun. I was expecting just to kind of set up the cam, but
Yeah. Next time we're in the area, we should hang out,
cool.
play with some synthesizers or something.
Absolutely.
Well, so now we're going to pretend like it's kind of a show, and we're going to say, hey, thanks for being on the show. Glad you could join us.
My pleasure.
Looks like we dropped off Mike, so we'll have to do his close later. But thanks again, man. We'll see you later.
All right. Next time.
All right, bye.
Well, that was cool. I'm glad we took time to call him. We'll have to get back with him for kind of what I'm considering a formal interview. But
yeah, I kind of see him as sort of like coming back on the regular, you know, maybe being with us or something like that. I don't know. What do you think?
yeah, and here's another reason why. There's a lot more to tell, but Bryan is a conduit to a lot of other people that I think we should talk to.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good.
All right. Well, I'm Mike Nimitz.
And I'm Mike Dow.
And this has been Mike's on Mike.
Mike's on Mike's, yeah.